Someone was talking about the trucks, how they put people in trucks with the exhaust pipes venting in, how they drove them around until they were blue. The people were blue and could be shoveled out from a trapdoor, past some barbed wire. Asters were drying in a field. When it was over, Pinky turned to her and sighed. "Heavy stuff," he said. "Heavy stuff?" Her breathing stopped, then sped up, then stopped again. Who on earth was entitled to such words? Who on earth, she felt in every way it was possible to feel it, astonished that she had slept with him. She went out with him again, but this time she greeted him at his own door with a stiff smile and a handshake, like a woman willing to settle out of court. "So casual," he said, standing in the doorway. "I don't know, you East Coast city slickers." "We got hard hearts," she said with an accent that wasn't really any particular accent at all. She wasn't good at accents. When they slept together again, she tried not to make too much of it. Once more, they watched Holocaust survivors. A different tape, out of sequence. The camera still searching hard for something natural to gaze upon, embarrassed like a bloodshot eye, weary and afraid of people and what they do. "They set fire to the bodies and to the barracks," said a voice. "The pyres burned for many days." Waves lapped, rain beat on a bulrush. In the bathroom, she ran the tap water so he couldn't hear as she sat, ill, staring at her legs, her mother's legs. When had she gotten her mother's legs? When she crept back to his bed, he was sleeping like a boy, the way men did. In the morning, she got up early and went to the closet. In the morning, she got up early and went to the closest thing there was to a deli and returned triumphantly with bagels and lox. Outside, the town had been museum dead, but the sky was lemony with sun and elongations of light, ovals of brightened blue now dappled Pinky's covers. She laid the breakfast out in them, and he rolled over and kissed her, his face waxy with sleep. He pointed at the locks. "You like that sort of stuff?" "Yup." Her mouth was already full with it, the cool, slimy pink. "Eat it all the time." He sighed and sank back into his pillow. "After breakfast, I'll teach you some Yiddish words." "I already know some Yiddish words. I'm from New York. Here, eat some of this." "I'll teach you tush and schmuck," Pinky yawned, then grinned, "and shiksa. All the things a nice Jewish boy practices on before he marries a nice Jewish girl. I know those." "What's wrong with you?" She refused to look at him. "I don't know." "I know," said Pinky, and he stood up on the bed, like a child about to bounce, towering naked, priapic. She could barely look. Oh, for a beaded bulrush. A train disappearing into a tunnel. "You're falling in love with me," he exclaimed, gazing merrily down. She still had her coat on and had stopped chewing. She stared disbelievingly up at him. Sometimes she thought she was just trying to have fun in life, and other times she realized she must be terribly confused. She narrowed her eyes, then she opened her mouth wide so that he could see the train wreck of chewed up bagel and lox. "I like that," said Pinky. "You're on to something there." Her poems, as she stated in letters to friends in New York, were not going well. She had put them on the back burner and they had fallen behind the stove. She had met this guy. Something had happened to the two of them in a cave. She wasn't sure what. She had to get out of here. She was giving her final reading to the library patrons and matrons in less than 3 weeks. And that would pretty much be it. "I hope you're not wearing those new puffy evening dresses I see in magazines. They make everyone look like sticky buns. It is cold. Love, Odette." Laird was curious. He kept turning his head sideways during the sit-up. "So you and Pinky hitting it off?" "Who knows," said Odette. "Well, I mean, everyone's had their difficulties in life. Everyone's had their difficulties in life. His I'm only a little aware of. I thought you'd find him interesting." "Sure, anthropologically." "You think he's a dork?" "Laird, we're in our 40s here. You can't use words like dork anymore." The sit-ups were getting harder. "He's not a dork. He's a doofus, maybe. Maybe a doink." "You're a hard woman," said Laird. "Oh, I'm not," pleaded Odette, collapsing on the rubber mat. "Really, I'm not." At night, he began to hold her in a way that stirred her deeply. He slept with one hand against the small of her back, the other capped against her head, as if to protect her from bad thoughts. Or perhaps thoughts at all. How quickly bodies came to love each other, promise themselves to each other always, without asking permission, from the mind. If only she could give up her mind, let her heart swell, inflamed, her brain stepping out for whole days, whole seasons, her work shrinking to limericks. She would open her mouth before the library fellowship people, and out would come, "There once was a woman from..." Someone would rush to a phone booth and call the police. But perhaps you could live only from the neck down. Perhaps you could live with the clothes you were taking off all piled on top of your head in front of your face, not just a sweater with a too small neck, but everything caught there, pants, shoes, and socks. A crazed tangle on your shoulders in lieu of a head, while your body stark naked, prepared to live the rest of its life in the sticks, the boonies, the flyover, the rain. Perhaps you could, for when she slept against him like that, all the rest of the world collapsed into a suitcase under the bed. It was the end of desire, this having. Oh, here she was. He would wrap himself around her, take her head like an infant's into his hand, and breathe thanks to her, her throat, her chest, in his beginning to sleep. Go to sleep with me. In the morning, she warmed her arms over the blue zinnias of the gas jets and heated water for coffee and eggs. Over the newspaper, she pretended she and Pinky were Beatrice and Benedict, or Nick and Nora Charles, which is what she always pretended in a love affair, at least for a few days until the evidence overwhelmed her. "Why are you always talking with your hands?" asked Pinky. "You think you're Jewish?" She glared at him. "You know, that's what I hate about this part of the country," she replied. "Everyone's so repressed. If you use your body in the least way while you're talking, people think you're trying out for a Broadway show." "Kiss me," he said, and he closed his eyes. On a weekday, Pinky would be off to his office to work on another farm bankruptcy or a case of animal abuse. "My clients," he said wearily. "You would never want to go out to eat with them. They come into my office reeking of cow shit. They lean back in the chair, set their belly out like that, and tell you about how some Humane Society bastard gave them a summons because their goat had worms." Across his face there breathed the sigh of tragedy. "It's a sad thing not to have clients you can go out to eat with." He shook his head. "It's a sad thing, a goat with worms." There was something nice about Pinky, but that something was not Nick Charles. Pinky was more like a grave and serious brother of Nick's, named Chuck Charles. When you had parents who would give you a name like that, there was nothing funny anymore. "What do you write poems about?" he asked her once in the middle of the night. "Whores," she said. "Whores," he repeated, nodding in the dark. She gave him books of poetry, Wordsworth, Whitman, all the W's. When she'd ask him how he liked them, he would say, "Fine, I'm on page," and then he would tell her what page he was on and how many pages he'd accomplished that day. "The Wadsworth is a little too literature-y for me." "Wordsworth," she corrected. They were in his kitchen drinking juice. "Wordsworth. Isn't there a poet named Wadsworth?" "No, you're probably thinking of Longfellow. That was his middle name." "Longfellow. Now who's he again?" "How about Leaves of Grass? What did you think of the poems in there?" "Okay, I'm on page 50, he said. Then he showed her his gun, which he kept in his kitchen in a leather case like a trombone. He kept a rifle, he said, in the basement. Odette frowned. "You hunt?" "Sure, Jews are supposed to hunt, I know." "Excuse me." "Sure, Jews aren't supposed to hunt, I know. But in this part of the country, it's best to have a gun," he smiled. "Bavarians, you know." "Here, try it out. Let me see how you look with a gun." "I'm afraid of guns." "Nothing to be afraid of, just heft it and look down the top of the barrel and line up the sights." She sighed, lifted the gun, pressed the butt hard against her right shoulder, and aimed it at the kitchen counter. "Now see the notch in the metal sticking up in the middle of your barrel?" Pinky was saying. "You have to get the bead in the middle of the notch." She closed her left eye. "I can feel the urge coming on to blow away that cutting board," she said. "Gun's not loaded, probably not till spring, turkey season, though I've got tags for deer." "You hunt turkeys?" She put the gun down. It was heavy. "You eat turkey, don't you?" "The turkeys I eat are raised on farms. They're different. They've signed on the dotted line." She paused and sighed again. "What do? Go into a field and fire away?" "Kind of. You try to catch them mid-flight. You know, I should take you deer hunting. It's the last 2 days this weekend. And I've got tags. Have you ever been?" "Please," she said. It was cold in the woods. She blew breath clouds, then rings of cigarette smoke into the dead ferns. "It's nice out here. You don't suppose we could just watch nature instead of shoot it?" "Without hunting, the deer would starve," said Pinky. "So maybe we could just cook for them?" They had brought along a bottle of Jim Beam, and she twisted it open and took a swig. "Have you ever been married?" "Once," said Pinky. "God, what, 20 years ago?" He quickly shouldered his rifle, thinking he heard something, but no. "Oh," she said, "I wasn't going to ask, but then you never said anything about it, so I thought I'd ask." "How about you?" "Not me," said Odette. She had a poem about marriage. It began, "Marriage is the death you want to die," and in front of audiences she never read it with much conviction. Usually she swung her foot back and forth through the whole thing. She looked down at her chest. "I don't think orange is anyone's most flattering color," she said. They were wearing blaze orange hats and vests. "I think we look like things placed in the middle of the road to make the cars go around." "Shh," said Pinky. She took another swig of Jim Beam. She had worn the wrong kind of boots, gray suede over the knees with 3-inch heels, and now she studied them with interest. One of the heels was loose and mud was drying on the toes. "Tell me again," she whispered to Pinky. "What makes us think a deer will cross our path?" "There's a doe bed not far from here," whispered Pinky. "It attracts bucks." Bucks, doe, thank God everything boils down to money, I always say. During mating season, the doe constructs a bed for herself and then she urinates all around the outside of it. That's how she gets her mate. "So that's it," murmured Odette. "I was always peeing in the bed." Pinky's gun suddenly fired into the trees and the noise filled the woods like a war, spilling to the ground the yellowing needles of a larch. "Ah," Odette screamed. "What is going on?" "Guns," she was reminded then, were not for girls. They were for boys. They were invented by boys. They were invented by boys who had never gotten over their disappointment that accompanying their own orgasm there wasn't a big boom sound. "What the hell are you doing?" "Damn," shouted Pinky. "I missed." He stood up and went crashing through the underbrush. "Oh my God," cried Odette, and she stumbled after him, snapping the same twigs underfoot, ducking the same barbed wire. "Where are we going?"